Hey, what's up? Zach here, and today I've got the all-new Nike LeBron 21. Let's get into them. Now, starting off in the uppers of the 21, you can really see where they've just made small tweaks from the 20s, just everything just a little bit upgraded, everything just a little bit nicer. The whole body of the uppers, at least of this model, is more like a suede nubuck, but a very, very almost molded type material. I found when I first put them on, felt very nice, a little bit of cramping after that, but then once I broke them in, they broke in really nice, almost like a custom fit, almost like a suede or nubuck version of Foamposite, because underneath of it you have the Nike Sphere, and it's pretty padded all the way from the heel into the forefoot. Remember, Nike Sphere is basically just these little cutouts shelling in the foam around the padding of the shoe, and that allows more air exchange, but what that also does is it also provides a little more surface area for you to break in the interior of the shoe. So these do have a really nice, almost like luxurious break-in once you kind of get past that initial point in the shoe, which is really nice. Now, speaking of that Nike Sphere, if you go into the tongue of the 21s, to me, this is really the best that you can get. You have giant circular air channels going all the way through the tongue up until you get to the very proximal portion of the tongue, like right where it hits your ankle. And then you get almost just this beaded padding, but it's really, really thick padding. And so you can cinch those laces down as hard as you want. You're still not gonna get any cramping or pinching in them. And because they are so wide open in the tongue, and just because those channels go all the way through that padding, if you look at the breathability test, pretty impressive for a shoe like this. They only heated up 91.8 degrees, then cooled down another 33.4 degrees. I noticed when I had the heat gun in there, you could really feel the heat coming out of the tongue, and because it is gusseted, it is not going anywhere. It is just a truly nice breathing shoe. It's not like some shoes where there's just really no tongue there, so there's a giant just gap in between the tongue and the rest of the uppers. These still have good containment. Now, going up the lace line, what I really like from the 20 into the 21 is they didn't necessarily put the lace line all that much higher into the ankle collar, although the ankle collar is just a tad higher. But what they did was they moved the second to last eyelet just a little bit further up into the ankle collar, and that really does give a nice lockdown there. It almost reminds me of kind of a combination of the LeBron 20 and then the LeBron Next Gen, because the Next Gens had really nice tie down. The LeBron 20s I felt had the more buttery feel in them, and so in the 21s you're kind of getting the lockdown plus that buttery feel. So just a really, like I said, small tweak, but it does make a huge difference. Now, really, there is not a lot of foxing or really any foxing in here. Even the Nike symbol is just basically padding in there. Really, the only individual stabilizing elements are the two tines that come in here from the lace line here in the middle of the lace line that go into the strobel. Really, the containment is coming from just the giant slab of more premium material that is encasing the shoe. It just on its own, that is just really darn containing. Now, if you look at that on the upper durability test, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, I mean, it's not going to be very good to abrasion. So in terms of outdoors, dragging or sliding, although it's great to blunt trauma, this is, like I said, almost like a Foamposite in terms of protection on your foot. It is really nice. It does provide a nice little shell around you. It is going to start to scuff up and really start to tear on a gritty outdoor court. So for me, if you're that kind of player, just keep them on indoors and you'll be okay. But definitely my favorite part of the uppers are the shoelaces themselves. Really nice, thick laces, and they are braided, so you do still get a decent lockdown on them. And speaking of the laces on here, if you do want a free guide to shoelacing, shoe customization, I do have that linked in the description below on the website. It's totally free. You can go over there and check that out. But suffice it to say, you won't be needing to replace the shoelaces on these because they are really darn good. But getting into what everyone wants to see, the midsole teardown. Now, there are no details on the shoe as of right now, so I've had to actually go to the Jordan 38 as well as the LeBron 20 to match and see what foam is under there. Right now, what I'm looking at under the microscope, this looks like the same Cushlon from the LeBron 20. And honestly, I don't really think it matters on a shoe like this if it's Cushlon 3.0 versus Cushlon, because the majority of the midsole is air. So you've got a Zoom turbo unit in the forefoot, top loaded, and then you have just a really fat Zoom air unit here in the heel. And honestly, that's really all you feel in them. Now, when you get to the mid part of the shoe, on the LeBron 20s, it was a very, very thin bottom loaded carbon fiber shank, which I think besides stress shielding the Cushlon and just making the foam maybe last a little longer. I wasn't sure it was doing all that much for performance. Versus here in the 21s, just a plastic shank, but top loaded and very wide, goes all the way across the shoe from medial to lateral, east to west. Now, when I had them on, I didn't know it was under there. I thought this shank was a lot bigger than it really was, because I was feeling a lot more snap from the shoe versus on the 20s. However, it is just, you know, basically bridging the two zoom units. So a little bit more outsized performance out of the shank for the footprint that it actually has. And just for any of you that are interested in Nike foam chemistry, when you look at the 20 and the 21 under the microscope, they look pretty much the same, right? They look like really low density cookie dough, basically. You know, whereas you look at Phylon, it's really high density under there. Those pores aren't very dense, whereas in Cushlon, it's really open. Then when you look at the Jordan 38, which is Cushlon 3.0 versus, you know, the Cushlon on these, you almost looks a little more reflective, a little more plasticky, and you can kind of see where the Cushlon 3.0 is going with those elements versus kind of like the standard foaming in the Cushlon. So that's kind of where you can see the difference between the two foams, Cushlon and Cushlon 3.0. And looking at this whole setup on the bounce height test, got 40.5 centimeters in the heel and then 45 centimeters in the forefoot. Just shows the larger zoom units don't necessarily give you more pop out of them, because, you know, it's a larger surface area for that, you know, potential energy to then release into kinetic. That heel zoom unit more feels cushioned and more shock absorbing, whereas the thinner zoom air unit in the forefoot, which has, I just think is just a little bit more tightly tuned, you know, the air tension is a little bit higher, that's where you really get that pop out of there. So both of these very good, but definitely that forefoot zoom area unit is really what's giving you the pop, whereas the rear foot zoom area unit is where it's giving you more of the plush comfort. And getting into the outsole tread, this is another one of these, you know, player data inspired outsole treads. It's basically just a bunch of squiggly lines going all the way through. It almost looks like a topographical map, but a little more irregular. But because it is so irregular, they can grab traction pretty much any direction. But I think the thing that I love the most about the 21s is this giant serrated air channel that goes all the way through the shoe. I found that this was what was grabbing the most a lot of times, especially when you were coming down really hard on your forefoot to pivot or cut. That's what was grabbing. Now I found that right out of the box, these had traction and stability like you would not believe. It was fantastic. That lateral flange goes really distal into the forefoot. It's made mostly of outsole rubber, so it really does give a ton of pivoting power, especially when you're putting all that weight on your forefoot. However, it did start to pick up dust after a while. All I had to do was wipe it off. I wiped off my shirt. It was fine. So I just say, if you want that same elite traction over the course of a whole game or practice, whatever, then I would just make sure you just have some sort of towel just to wipe down the dust off there, and they'll be just fine. As soon as I wiped it down, traction went back to, you know, its really elite level. It is a full length tread pattern, so like I said, you are gonna grab traction no matter where you are stepping down, and because that massive zoom air unit is in the heel, and the heel is just a little bit flatter, they also are a lot more comfortable down there. It just feels just a little bit more stable and a little more plush on every step you take versus, you know, just some other shoes that just don't have that design. But I think the most impressive part of the 21s when you combine the outsole and the midsole is the speed ratio. Comes in at a 2.72, and I think that really does nail down these shoes. These things are really quick off the blocks. First step on these is wicked quick, and they pick up speed very easily. They cut very easily, as long as there's no dust on them, and they just feel a little bit lighter on foot because you're getting all that buoyancy from the zoom, all that tension from the zoom under there. Top loaded shank just gives a little bit more back to you, and I think just kind of the overall silhouette of the shoe just a little bit sleeker than the 20s, you know, just everything on this is just a little bit just more aerodynamic, just a little bit less cumbersome on foot. So I think if you are looking for these for number one, quick cornering and kind of quick speed in a small contained area, or speed going coast to coast, 21s probably have you covered. And on the outsole durability test, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, actually pretty impressive. Not even a millimeter of damage on about a 2mm tread depth. The only thing is the tread is just so exposed because there's these really narrow squiggly lines on there. So, I mean, to me, this is still more of an indoor shoe rubberized, or they're fine on carpet too. If you want to take them on outdoor courts, I think if you have light, pretty feathery footwork, kind of like a Steph Curry type footwork, I think you're probably fine. If you're kind of like me and lumber down the court, slide and drag everywhere, then that's when I'd say just keep them on indoor courts. And getting into the fit of the 21s, kind of alluded to it before, but I'd say a narrow and medium foot, go true to size. Even a 2E, I think, can just go true to size if you're okay with that little bit of that break-in period, that little bit of a transitional period. If you do want a little more room in there, you know, bulky orthotic, you can't just go up a half size or a brace or something. You just go up a half size, I think 4E, go up 1/2 size to 1 size, depending on if you want that performance fit versus that roomy and comfortable fit. Because the lockdown in these is just a little bit better versus its predecessor, I think you can start to play with those sizes a little bit. The heel slippage really is none in these. Now, in terms of the snake bitten foot, because of that fat zoom air unit in the heel, great for heel pain. 4-foot zoom turbo is fantastic, and the Cushlon underneath of that is really nice. The shank, because it is top loaded now, a little bit more stiff, a little more robust, arch pain, anything like that is fine. Put an orthotic in there and you've really taken it up a notch. So really for lumps, bumps, bruises, snake bites on your foot, I think these are fantastic. One of the better shoes out there right now, especially because the uppers are a little bit more protective as well. So I really think anything you're bringing to the court, I think these are going to have you covered. But what is most definitely the best part of the LeBron 21s is their playability and performance. These shoes are just such a fun shoe to play in. They remind me of the JB one in terms of the fun that they bring to the court. I just had such a great time cutting, moving, just doing, you know, little stupid stuff around the hoop. I feel like I could cut, pivot, move, get up into the air so quickly. It really made me feel like I was doing something out there, although I'm sure when you watch the video, probably tell I'm not doing as much as I think I am in my head. However, just, you know, when I was doing that little shot where I would go behind the hoop and try to stop on the baseline and try to get the ball up over the hoop, you know, really just try to see how much they would pivot and corner and stay balanced when, you know, out of bounds is right there. I found that these just were so sure-footed. I think that's why they're so much fun to play in, right? They've got all that air tension, so much buoyancy underfoot, but they will also, you know, hold you down when you need to. They will also give you that cutting power and that stability when you need to. I think the nicest thing about them is they will play just as well for a really shifty point or shooting guard as they will a larger center. So these really just run the gambit of positions. And I think, you know, the uppers, like I said, being such a nice break-in shoe, like I said, I had some problems with them kind of in that middle period, you know, like that day 1.5 to 2, and then once they broke in, that's, like I said, the fun factor just went sky high in them. So I think if you're looking for a shoe in and around the hoop, a shoe that you're trying to get rebounds, offensive boards, shoe you're trying to get from coast to coast really easily with, or when you're running drills and you just need a little bit something on your foot to keep you feeling fresh, I think that the 21s really just do an awesome job. And like I said, I think in terms of a shoe to go out and just have fun on foot with, I think this is definitely it. And I think they didn't do a ton from the 20 to the 21 in terms of radically changing it versus from the 19 to the 20, but everything they did from the 20 to the 21 was really thoughtful, really just well planned and well executed. So really kudos to the design team on this. I had a great time playing in these. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. If you're looking to upgrade to the 21s or if you're just stocking up on old 20s, just let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to see the shoe, like I said, I compared them to with the Cushlon 3.0, the Air Jordan 38 going to the knife, make sure you click into this video up above and subscribe down below. Respect your rubber and foam, and I'll see you somewhere in the Sneakerverse.